The black sedan had dark-tinted windows and pulled up to the sheriff's office. The driver opened the door, and stepping out was a 6-foot-tall man with slick black hair. He had black dress pants and a black blazer, along with a blue tie and dark sunglasses. The man walks around his car and looks around his surroundings. As small as the town of Candy Water is, he has a view of almost the whole town. Deputy Garza and Sheriff James arrive at the office and see this strange, well-dressed man standing by his car. As the two park their vehicles, they look at each other and then at the man. The man takes off his sunglasses and makes eye contact with Sheriff James. The man lets out a smile and extends his arm out to introduce himself. He is FBI agent Dan Copper. The men shake hands and go into the office. The sheriff thanks Agent Copper for coming down to Candy Water and assisting with the investigation. Deputy Garza, Sheriff James, and Agent Copper are standing in the personal office of Sheriff James. Agent Copper politely tells the sheriff and deputy that the FBI is now in charge and everything must go through Agent Copper. Sheriff James understands and tells Agent Copper that he has worked with the FBI before. Sheriff James tells Agent Copper all that matters is finding the killer and making sure everyone is safe. Agent Copper is glad that there will be no conflict and that they will work as a team. Sheriff James tells Agent Copper where the murder took place. Just then Dawn runs into the office. She tells Sheriff James that Ryan is missing. Earlier that morning, Ryan's mom, Nelda, was yelling out to Ryan to wake up. Nelda got home late last night. Just another day at work for her. Jack, Ryan's father, was still truck driving and wouldn't be home for another day. All that was common in Ryan's household. Oftentimes Ryan would get home and make himself food and go to sleep before anyone got home. The night before was no different. Nelda didn't get home till nearly 9 o'clock. When she walked into the house, it was quiet. She figured Ryan was already asleep. After all that happened throughout the day, Ryan must have been tired. Nelda slightly opened his bedroom door and saw him in bed. At least that's what she thinks she saw. The day had been long for Nelda as well, and her eyes were tired. She fell asleep and woke up the next day. After 5 minutes of calling out and no answer, Nelda stormed into Ryan's room. Walking in with an angry stance, Nelda was taken back in shock. Ryan was not in his room, and the bed appeared to be the same as it was last night. Nelda then walked around the house and couldn't find Ryan. She went outside and Ryan was nowhere to be seen. It was okay, Nelda thought. Ryan was probably just at his friend's house. He was always at his friend's house. Nelda got her purse. She got the phone number to the parents. She had wrote them down on a notepad. She found the number to the Rivera household and called them. Nelda figured there was nothing to worry about. Ryan would be there, and everything would be okay. Rita answered the phone and Nelda asked if Ryan was there. After Rita's response, Nelda felt like her body had been drained of energy. Her worst fear had come to reality. The fear had gripped her as she let out a scream. She quickly got herself together and called the sheriff. Dawn answered and heard Nelda frantically tell her what had happened. Sheriff James was in disbelief as Dawn told him the news. With all that had happened yesterday and now this, Agent Copper told him to take a deep breath. Sheriff James nodded his head and began to gather himself. He told Agent Copper to head down to the silo, and he will meet with him soon. Sheriff James told Deputy Garza to come with him to Ryan's house. Agent Copper agreed with the sheriff. Agent Copper got the directions to the silo and would make his way over to them. Sheriff James and Deputy Garza got into their cruisers and went over to Ryan's house. Police sirens once again filled the town. The sirens ringed in Joe Sr.'s ear as Rita told him about the disappearance of Ryan. Ray and Michael sprinted over to Joe as they saw the look on his face. They were taken back as Joe Sr. repeated what Rita had said. Michael still had the videocassette in his hand. The three looked at the cassette and then at each other. Joe Sr. told them not now and it could wait. What matters most is the boys' well-being. Ray and Michael agreed. They went home to check in on their boys. Rick and Steve were still asleep in their rooms, and Joe Jr. was washing up after being woke up by his mom. Joe Sr. was not sure how to tell his son about Ryan. The phone rang once again at the Rivera household. Joe Sr. answers the phone this time. It is Ray, and he is asking how to tell Rick about Ryan. As Joe was about to speak, he hears a knock on the door. Joe peeks out the window and sees that Michael is standing outside. He is fidgeting as he awaits at the door. Joe tells Ray to come over to the house. Joe Sr. walks outside as Michael is about to speak. But Joe tells him to be quiet. Soon after, Ray is with the two, and Joe tells them to go to the sidewalk. He doesn't want the boys to hear what they are about to talk about. Joe already knows the subject of their conversation. Sure enough, Ray and Michael asked Joe for his advice on how to tell the boys. Joe figured they should tell them and be supportive to them. Neither one knows how to go about this. This marks the first time something tragic has hit close to home. The dads agree the boys should be close together and closely washed. As they agree on what to say and how to handle the situation, Ray looks over to the Lance house. He asked Joe and Michael if they think their neighbors may have a hand in this. Michael reminds them about the tape. Joe Sr. says not to worry about that. He knows the sheriff will call to question them all soon enough. Ray maintains his suspicions about the Lance. The bark of a small dog catches the attention of Ray, Michael, and Joe. They look down the road and see that Bill is doing some yard work. They wave at Bill, but he ignores their gestures. Michael feels insulted by Bill. He then makes a crude remark and walked away from Ray and Joe. Ray asked Joe why the hatred Michael has towards Bill. Joe tells Ray that Michael hates Bill because of his yard. Michael has tried for years to get his yard better than Bill. But Michael feels he always comes up short. Plus, he thinks Bill purposely trains his dog to crap on Michael's yard. Ray laughs and walks back to his house. Joe does the same. As the dads walked back into their house to talk to their son about Ryan, Sheriff James and Deputy Garza arrive at Ryan's house. Nelda lets in the sheriff and deputy to her house. The two enter and sit down in the living room. Nelda also sits down and begins to tell her story. Sheriff James writes down Nelda's statement. He also writes down the list of friends that Ryan has. Nelda fears that Ryan might suffer the same fate as Sarah Vila. But the sheriff calms her down. He tells her that these are two different situations and Ryan would be okay. Sheriff James gets up and tells Nelda he has her statement and will get back with her before the day ends. Deputy Garza will search the grounds and Ryan's room. Nelda then begins to cry, and Sheriff James gives her a hug and reassures her everything will be okay. Deputy Garza stays behind and begins to search the house as Sheriff James exits. Sheriff James leaves Ryan's house and is on his way to the silo. On his way, Sheriff James radios over to Dawn. He tells her to call the parents of Ryan's friends and have them come over to the office around noon time. Dawn takes down the names and lets Sheriff James know she will contact them as soon as possible. Sheriff James thanks Dawn as he arrives at the silo. Pulling up to the site, Sheriff James notices Agent Copper collecting dirt outside the silo. Sheriff James got off his cruiser and walks over to Agent Copper. The sheriff asked Agent Copper why he was scrapping off the steel from the silo. Agent Copper then leads Sheriff James back into the silo. As the sheriff walked back into the grisly site, the scenes from yesterday floods into his head. Agent Copper pointed out that there was some burn marks inside the silo. The steel had slight black marks within the silver paint. Agent Copper pointed out that could only mean fire. Not only that, but it appeared to be recent. Sheriff James looked on closely and saw what Agent Copper saw. He hadn't noticed that before. Agent Copper also pointed out that there was ash-like substance inside and outside the silo. The ash was in the area of the burn marks inside the silo. Agent Copper remarked that the silo is made of corrugated steel and would not turn to ash. It also takes a high temperature and persistent fire to cause any kind of damage. Once again, the sheriff hadn't noticed that the other day. The two walked outside the silo and were about to get back into their vehicles. "Hey Sheriff James, those train tracks, are they still in use?" Agent Copper asked. "Yes, sir. They're in use. Heck, that train passes quite frequently." "Good, I was hoping you would say that. Let's get a hold of the company. Let's get their schedule and list of personnel. Maybe one of them saw something that night or morning. Sheriff James and Agent Copper get back to the office. Sheriff James tells Don to get a hold of the railroad company and get the train schedule. Also, to acquire a list with personnel from the night of Sarah's murder. Don tells the sheriff okay, and lets him know that Sheriff Harris is in his office. Sheriff James and Agent Copper walked into the office and greet Sheriff Harris. Don calls the rail company, and the company will fax over the records before the day is over. Sheriff Harris tells Sheriff James he has been briefed on the missing boy situation. He then asks James what additional resources will be needed. Agent Copper asks Sheriff Harris if he can handle the situation. Sheriff James would be a big help to Agent Copper if he stayed focused on the murder case. Sheriff Harris said that wouldn't be a problem. Sheriff Harris asked Agent Copper if it was possible that these cases might be connected to each other. Agent Copper said it was possible. He told Sheriff Harris to interview the friends of Ryan, and he would overlook the information. Agent Copper would see what they have gathered, and would consider if the two cases have any connections. Sheriff James told Agent Copper he will interview the kids. They might be more comfortable around him than Sheriff Harris. Agent Copper nodded and asked if he could see the report of the murder case. Sheriff James gave Agent Copper his report and the deputy report of the case. Sheriff James told Agent Copper he could work in the record room if he needed some space. Agent Copper took him up on that offer and went to the room. Sheriff Harris sat in Sheriff James' office and asked how he was doing. Sheriff James responded that he was okay. Sheriff Harris chuckled and said not to worry, he would continue to have more additional officers in the area. Also, Harris told James that he would begin to organize a search party. Sheriff Harris has already confirmed that 5 of his officers will be on their way to Candy Water. He also reached out and got 2 state troopers to join in on a search party. He also said that deputies from Cotton Town were going door to door and asking if anyone has seen Ryan. They were asking if they would join the search party later in the day. By the time the deputies got to the house of Joe Jr., he had already been told by his dad that Ryan was missing. In fact, Rick and Steve had also been told by their dads Ryan was missing. The 3 boys were devastated by the news. They were in disbelief that something like this could have happened. Rick and Steve were at Joe Jr.'s house. On any other day, the boys would be laughing and playing video games. Actually, today, they should have been in school, waiting for the final bell to ring. That would have ushered in spring break. Only on this day, it felt empty. A day after a murder, and now their friend is missing. They tried to think what could have happened. How could this have happened? Ryan was just at the house less than 12 hours ago. Who could have done such a thing? They all thought, why is this happening now? The boys started to think out loud about what happened. Steve thinks the murderer kidnapped him. The murderer is someone in town, someone who has snapped. He hated Sarah and did what he did. Then last night he saw Ryan walking home. He felt that urge once again and snatched Ryan off the street. Now he's holding him prisoner. Poor Ryan, but he is probably still alive, waiting to be rescued. Rick then weighs in. Maybe nobody kidnapped him. What if he ran away and didn't want to bother telling us? It may be possible, think about it. He always says his parents are gone and he is always by himself. Maybe he said forget this and ran away. Of those 2, I hope you are right, Rick. I don't want to think that some weirdo or killer kidnapped Ryan. I would rather think he ran away, but I don't believe he did. I don't know, but I think something bad happened to him. I just feel it in my gut, Joe Jr. says. Ray, Michael and Joe Sr. are sitting in the living room. Michael has the videotape and is there contemplating whether to play it. Joe Sr. tells him to wait, it's almost time to go down to the station and talk to Sheriff James. Ray is anxious and wants to see what is on the tape. Joe Sr. calls for the boys. They load up Joe's minivan and head over to the sheriff's office. The fathers tell their sons not to be nervous and tell the sheriff everything he wants to know. The more the sheriff knows, the better chances of finding Ryan. The boys agree to tell the sheriff all they know. They all arrive at the sheriff's office and make their way inside. They sit in the lobby area, and Sheriff James calls them into the interview room one at a time. He starts with the dads and works his way to the boys. The dad tells Sheriff James the same story. They saw him yesterday and he is friends with their boys. The boys are also called in one at a time. Each one tells Sheriff James their friendship with Ryan. Each one tells the sheriff that Ryan left before 5 back to his house. The only thing is that the boys aren't sure which route he took back home. They told the sheriff that they had told Ryan to take the normal way home. The sheriff asked what the normal way was for Ryan to go home. They told him the normal way was to go back at the cul-de-sac and take the main road home. Then the sheriff asked the other way home. They told Sheriff James about Shadowbrook Road, the shortcut by jumping the fence and going along the county road back to his house. Sheriff James wrote all the information the kids given him. The dads and kids waited in the lobby area after they gave their statements. They waited for the sheriff to dismiss them. Not too long, the sheriff walked out of the interview room and into the lobby area. Sheriff James thanked them for coming down to the office and giving them information on Ryan. He told them it will be an ongoing investigation and he will keep in touch with each of them. He asked if they would join the search party and told the boys to stay close together and not go searching on their own. The dad said they will join the search party and make sure the boys don't wander off on their own. They went home and they told their boys to listen to the sheriff and not go looking alone. The boys agreed with their dads. Deputy Garza handed his report about Ryan over to Sheriff James. He begins to review all that the boys had said and all that Deputy Garza had reported. Something wasn't adding up to Sheriff James. Good kid, small group of friends, nothing missing from Ryan's room. Sheriff Harris and Agent Copper walked into Sheriff James' office. The two sat down and Sheriff James tells them about his conclusion on Ryan's case. Sheriff James believes that Ryan's case is related to Sarah's case. Agent Copper questioned Sheriff James if he believes this to be true. Sheriff James tells Agent Copper that it can't be a coincidence that a kid goes missing a day after a murder. The town is too small and has no record or reputation of these kinds of cases. Okay, Sheriff James, we'll treat these cases the same. Sheriff Harris, you will handle the search party and public affairs of this matter. Sheriff James and I will handle the bones of the case. We cannot leave anything uncovered, Agent Copper says. Dawn knocks on the open door of Sheriff James's office. She informs all in the room that the principal and coroner have called. The coroner report is available for pickup. Also, the principal wants to know about what to do with Sarah's locker. Agent Copper looks over the Sheriff James and tells him they should go over to the high school and search Sarah's locker. Sheriff Harris tells the two he will head over to the football field and get the search team ready. Agent Copper tells Sheriff James to get into his car and they will head over to the high school. 4.